Speaking of storms, France is in the middle of one. There's been a wave of protests. This is what France has looked like for weeks now. People are angry with the French president. And where is the president? He landed in China today. Beijing has rolled out a red carpet for President Emmanuel Macron, and the timing is worth noting. His own country is burning over pension reform, and his top ally, the US, is at odds with China, and that's putting it mildly. Their relations have hit rock bottom. But Macron does not want to get caught up in this. He wants Europe to take the middle path, and he's leading the way. And this betrays Europe's confusion vis-à-vis China. They want to run with the hares and hunt with the hounds. They want to ban Chinese app TikTok, but they want to take business delegations to Beijing. They talk about decoupling with China. They want to reduce dependence on China for critical raw materials like lithium, but they also want to engage with China. European leaders are making a beeline for Beijing. It began last year when China reopened its doors to the world. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz was the first one to go. Last week, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez was in Beijing. And this week, French President Emmanuel Macron is there. With him is the EU chief, Ursula von der Leyen. And Beijing is making a clear distinction between the two. China says Macron is on a state visit on China's invitation, while von der Leyen is merely visiting. But what are they doing there? You could say Europe is suffering from a case of FOMO, the fear of missing out. They want to shun China, but they also want China, and the war in Ukraine has given them an excuse. This is China's smokescreen of mediation. Xi Jinping wants to broker peace. Last month, he went to Russia and presented a peace plan. Putin liked it, but as expected, the West trashed it.
Of course, we did not ignore the situation around Ukraine. We believe that many of the provisions of the peace plan put forward by China are consonant with Russian approaches and can be taken as the basis for a peaceful settlement when they are ready for that in the West and in Kiev.
So the peace plan was China's bait, and Europe happily took it. For months, the Europe-China relationship has been in a deep freeze. That's because China was backing Russia in the war. So Europe cut engagement, but now it wants to talk, and the peace plan is a good place to start, also a good alibi. So European leaders are rushing to China. They want to weigh in on Xi Jinping's peace plan. They want to make it look like a noble mission to pursue peace for Ukraine, and not really about business deals for their countries. Last week, Spain's Prime Minister made an appeal.
He insistido en la importancia de que Ucrania
I have also encouraged President Xi to have a conversation with President Zelensky to learn firsthand about the peace plan of the Ukrainian government.
He is encouraging Xi Jinping to talk to Zelensky. Expect Macron and von der Leyen to say the same. Do they really think China can deliver peace? Well, they do. But in typical European fashion, they've decided China can only be a facilitator and not a mediator. Listen to this.
It is clear that China should use its great influence on Putin to speed up the diplomatic negotiation. China cannot be a mediator because it's on one side, but it can be a facilitator.
Not a mediator, but a facilitator. Brussels has assigned a role for Beijing. And it's using this to engage with China. Leading the effort, like I said, is Emmanuel Macron. He wants to define Europe's China policy. He says Europe should not have to pick a side. If the US and China are fighting, Europe should be able to walk the middle path. And Macron has been making this pitch for a while. Last year he said, we need a single world order.
China, precisely, has proposed a peace plan. We welcomed it. But do we agree on all of it? No. Nevertheless, it proves a will to engage in the resolution of the conflict.
But for any of this to materialize, he must first bridge the divides within the European Union. There are leaders who do not agree with Macron's approach. Like Lithuania's foreign minister, he says France should proceed with caution. In fact, let me quote from his statement. This is what he said. We should remember that attempts to contain Russia by offering economic partnership failed. Putin was in fact emboldened by our flexibility, not persuaded. Similar tactics would also embolden China. He has a point. But the West, including the US, for the longest time has made this mistake. They see China as part of the solution rather than the problem. They're attracted by the business and they lose sight of the strategic challenges. The US woke up to this only recently. Europe is still sitting on the fence.
It is clear that our relations have become more distant and more difficult in the last few years. We've seen a very deliberate hardening of China's overall strategic posture for some time.
We're waiting to see what Xi says on Chinese soil and what Macron says and does. He doesn't want to make a choice, but when you're an American ally and a junior partner, not making a choice is often not a choice. Also, it's worth tracking China's response. Talking to Europe will help Xi Jinping. He's been increasingly isolated and slammed for his policies. This visit, or visits like these, may change some of it.